The clocks struck 13 in Airstrip 1, a grim province of Oceania. The sky hung low, choked with smoke and the unblinking eyes of Big Brother. His face, stern and eternal, stared from every wall, every street corner, every telescreen. Big Brother is watching you. Winston Smith walked briskly through the biting wind, collar up, eyes down. The crowd around him moved silently, their faces expressionless. Words were dangerous. Even thoughts could betray you. The telescreens never slept. Microphones hid in the walls. Spies could be anywhere, even your own child. Inside his dingy flat, the telescreen barked the party's iron slogans. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Winston stared at the gray walls and clenched his fists. He knew these were lies. He knew the party twisted truth until nothing remained but obedience. At the Ministry of Truth, he rewrote history daily, erasing names, destroying photographs, feeding the truth to memory holes where flames devoured facts. A man erased was a man who had never existed. And yet Winston remembered. He remembered his mother's face, his sister's tiny hands, and a time before the party's boot stamped on the human spirit. That night, with trembling hands, he sat in the corner of his flat where the telescreen's eye could not fully see him. From his pocket, he drew a blank notebook, a crime in itself. He opened it, gripped his pen, and scrawled words that burned with forbidden fire. Down with Big Brother. It was treason. It was death. But it was freedom. The girl with dark hair. Days passed, gray and heavy, until Winston noticed her. The girl with dark hair from the fiction department. Julia. He had suspected her once, thought she was a spy. She was too bold, too confident. But then, one ordinary morning, she stumbled near him in the corridor, slipped a crumpled paper into his palm, and walked away without a glance. With pounding heart, Winston opened the note in the privacy of his cubicle. 3 words, scrawled in shaky ink, set his blood aflame. I love you. They met secretly, in shadows and alleys, under the eyes of Big Brother. Then, one day, beyond the gray city, they reached the golden country. Sunlight streamed through trees and birds sang like forgotten freedom. There in the rustling grass they kissed, hungry, desperate, alive. Does the party know? Winston whispered. Julia smiled, her eyes burning. They know everything, but they'll never stop us. Not here, not now. For a while, Winston believed her. They rented a room above Mr. Charrington's dusty antique shop, a room with no telescreen. They made love, talked of rebellion, dreamed of smashing the party. Julia laughed at politics. Her rebellion was pleasure, not ideology. But to Winston, their love was an act of war. He thought they were safe. He thought wrong. The betrayal. The knock came like a gunshot. The door crashed open. The thought police poured in, black uniforms gleaming. Julia screamed. Winston froze. And then he saw him. Mr. Charrington. The kindly old man from the shop, now cold and merciless beneath his mask. Room 101, someone hissed. They dragged Julia one way, Winston another. The world went black. The Ministry of Love, white walls, blinding lights, pain. When Winston woke, his body was shackled, his face swollen. Across the room stood O'Brien, the man Winston had trusted, the man who had promised the Brotherhood, the resistance. You knew this would happen, Winston, O'Brien said softly. You knew we'd win. Why? Winston croaked. Why do this? What do you want? O'Brien's smile was slow, cruel. Power. Power is not a means, Winston. It is an end. The party seeks power for its own sake. Nothing else matters. Then came the torture. Not just pain, but the breaking of the soul. They shattered his bones, then his thoughts. O'Brien taught him double-think, to believe two contradictory truths at once. 2 + 2 = 5, O'Brien said. Winston resisted, at first, but the electric agony tore through him like fire. His screams echoed until his voice was gone. Reality, O'Brien whispered, exists only in the mind, and the mind belongs to the party. Room 101. They saved the worst for last. The door swung open. A cage filled with starving rats waited on the table. O'Brien's voice was calm, almost tender. You know what's in room 101, Winston. The thing you fear most. The cage came closer. Winston's terror erupted into madness. Not me, he howled. Do it to Julia! Tear her face off, not me! And with those words, Winston's soul snapped. The end of a man. When they released him, Winston Smith was no longer Winston Smith. He sat alone in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, drinking bitter victory gin, his heart hollow. He saw Julia once, across the street. Her eyes were dead, her smile gone. They did not touch. They did not speak. They were strangers. On the telescreen, Big Brother's face filled the room. The war raged on, the party triumphant. Winston stared at that face, the face that had haunted his life, and something inside him shifted. Warmth bloomed where defiance had lived. Tears slid down his cheeks as he whispered, with love in his broken voice, I love Big Brother. What this means. This is not just Winston's story. It is a warning. Truth dies when language is shackled. Freedom dies when fear rules. Love dies when power becomes God. And in the end, the party wins, not by killing the body, but by owning the mind. Thank you so much for watching.